Rosemary. I'm so happy to be with you guys this morning. I am a registered nurse, so the title is it's a little bit of a misnomer, but it makes me think of Bugs Bunny and eating carrots, which is always healthy. So I'll go ahead and get started. I look forward to your questions at the end. So if you have questions, be sure and write them down as we go along. And these are the things that I have kind of looking at my own kids and just I've been a nurse for 40 years, 35 of them at Harborview. And so some things that kind of stick in my mind about things that you might need to know as you transition from being in high school where, you know, the groceries are usually stocked and the meds cabinets are usually stocked to going to a situation where you may have to be doing that stuff yourself. So the first thing, these are the basics that if you eat right, you exercise, and you get plenty of sleep, that's the baseline of good health. So, but I know that you've heard that a million times before. The problem is after you leave home, there's going to be some new challenges. One, how to do your time management so you actually have time to do your grocery shopping. I really recommend making a list. Make sure you have plenty of fruits and vegetables on that list so that you have them whenever you're hungry. Because if you don't have groceries on hand and you get hungry, it's easier to just go get something at a fast food restaurant or maybe go to the cafeteria on campus if you're going to college. So if you have fruits and vegetables on hand, you're more likely to eat them. Getting rest can be a real challenge, particularly if you've got put on a shift that doesn't fit with your circadian rhythm. When I got out of nursing school, I had to go to night shift. And when you go to night shift, you work 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. or 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And it can really wreak havoc with what organizational skills you had and the way that you get your sleep in. And so instead of maybe sleeping 6 or 8 hours all at once, I might sleep 3 hours, run some errands, and then sleep 4 more hours before going back to work. So you have to, depending on what your circumstances are, you may have to adjust your sleep. You also need to set your time and plan your time so that you have time to study and you still have time to go to sleep and get rest. I am the queen of procrastination, and I did so many all-nighters whenever I was in college that I feel really like a fake saying, don't do all-nighters. But really, if you keep up and go along, do your work as you go along, you're going to be better off. It'll stick more in your long-term memory. That stuff that you memorize overnight when you're just drinking down the coffee and the energy drinks, which I'm totally against energy drinks. But I know that kids do that, but it's not the best way to get that information to stick in your head. Let's see. So those are the building blocks of good health. Now, the other thing that you have to keep in mind is that there's this thing called preventive maintenance. And I bet Kurt Hayes talks about this whenever he's talking about automobiles later on today. But preventive maintenance for us, for our bodies, is scheduling annual doctor appointments. Whether you're sick or not, you should see the doctor once a year to look for kind of chronic things that can kind of sneak up on you. You cultivate a relationship with that physician so that if you develop some kind of issue later on, you feel comfortable talking with them about it. The other things that are really important to do, dental appointments twice a year. You may have to learn to schedule those on your own depending on where you are. You may also need to learn how to fill out insurance forms. These are the kinds of things you should ask your parents before you're out of the nest so that you know what you have to do. Some insurance, the provider does all of the work, but for some insurance, you have to actually fill out a form yourself. Keep in mind that the emergency room is a very, very expensive place to get primary care. So it's much better if you get a primary care provider where you are, or at least if you're in college and you've gone away to another state, look into the health care that's available on campus. typically will have like at the UW, they have Hall Health where you can go to and you can get like you can get swabbed for strep throat and that kind of stuff. Two things that you need to do yourself, and this is something that you should get in the habit of doing right now at your age. For females, the breast exam, and that is that you do a self breast exam every month after your period is over. And what you do is you can go to this website. It's called www.breastcancer.org. And it will show you, there's 5 steps that you go through, and it'll show you step by step how to do that exam. It's really important to do this to become familiar with how your breast tissue feels. That way you'll be able to spot if there is a lump or a bump that appears that is new. It's an important thing for you to have mastery of. So I know it's kind of embarrassing, and if we were in a classroom, there'd be some tittering about this, but it's really important. And the other thing for males is equally important, if not more important, is checking your testicles every month. Same thing, you can do a self-exam every month. The place that will tell you how to do that is the www.americancancersociety.org. Men are at highest risk for testicular cancer between 15 and 35. So it really behooves you to learn this. The other thing that for testicular exam, there's this organization that's called Check Your Nads Lads, and they will frequently be up like at a farmer's market or at a street festival, and they have a little booth that you can go in, and they have instructions on how to actually do the exam. And the goal is the same as with the breast exam. You get to know how your tissues feel so you can feel if something abnormal develops. And then if something abnormal does develop, you need to go to the doctor and see if it's something that's bad or needs to be looked into. Sometimes you can feel something a little different and it's just an infection that can be cleared with antibiotics. But other times you can actually feel a tumor. So it's important to do that. The other things, whether you're going to be moving into a dorm or you're going to be leaving home to just go into your own apartment, you want to have a first aid kit. You want to be prepared for an injury. You want to have Band-Aids, bandages, antiseptic cleaner, ACE wraps. I don't know about you, but I have one kid that can't get anywhere without spraining an ankle or a wrist. And so with her, I'm going to send her with like a box of ACE wraps because that's just how she rolls. And let's see, other things in there, triple antibiotic cream. If you get a cut, you want to clean it with antiseptic cleaner and then put some triple antibiotic cream, also called Neosporin. That's the name brand. And then a Band-Aid or a bandage over the wound. I'm an old burn ICU nurse, and so one of our mottos was that a dry wound is a dead wound, which means that that wound is not healing if it's all dead. So you put a little bit of that Neosporin or triple antibiotic cream on it, and it will help that to heal. And it'll help it to heal faster because a strange little thing, epithelial cells, that's the building block of your skin. They cannot climb over. They have to slide across. So if you get like a nasty little skin thing built up around here, the epithelial cells will just keep bumping into it. And that's how sometimes you get like a really ugly scar because a scab stayed on too long. And you'll get like a buildup of tissue there. It's kind of an interesting little trivia there. The other thing so it's important to assemble this kit before you move out, before you're on your own, because you should have it. You don't want to cut your finger slicing a bagel and then realize, oh, I don't have anything to put on it. So you want to have this. This is preventive. You have to check it for expiration dates. If you don't use it, refresh it. The other thing you want to have prepared, and a little clue, when you're getting ready, if you're going to college and people are buying you presents, ask for a first aid kit. as a present, because then you don't have to assemble your own. You can get a pre-made one that'll be all nice and contained in a little box, and it's somebody will feel good about giving that to you. Or if you're moving into an apartment and you want a housewarming gift, that's a nice housewarming gift. The other one that you need to be prepared for is illness. And this is what you want to assemble while you're feeling well. You need a thermometer, you need cough medicine, and I usually get one that has an antihistamine in it as well, which means that it'll take care of my cough and it'll take care of my runny nose. You want to have acetaminophen, which is known also as Tylenol, or ibuprofen, which is known also as Advil. And you want to have something for upset stomach, like Alka-Seltzer, Tums, or something similar. If you know that you get reflux after you eat spicy food, then you might want to invest in one of the anti-reflux meds so that you have that on hand. The important thing about these things is to have them before you feel sick, because when you feel sick, you shouldn't be going out and exposing people to your germs, but you also don't feel like going out and getting stuff. So you want to also assemble this before you move out. And other things that should go in there, some tissues. Remember that generic meds are cheaper than name brand meds, and for most people, they can't really tell the difference in them. There's a few people that say, well, Advil works for me, but just regular ibuprofen doesn't. If you're like that, then you may have to stick with Advil, but for most people, ibuprofen and acetaminophen are the ones that will handle just about anything. Let's see, and then replenish this after your illness so that it's ready for the next time. So most of you have grown up in a home where if you had a cold, you just had to ask one of your parents or your guardian to go get the cold medicine. And now you're going to be in an environment, or you're potentially in an environment where you're not going to have that. So those are the kinds of things you need to get. Now, a big warning about acetaminophen, and you've probably seen this if you've ever read the literature that comes with it. Acetaminophen is part of many cold remedies. So what you want to avoid is if you are taking, and the reason that the cold medicine I said for you to take is cold medicine and antihistamine without Tylenol. You don't want to take a cold medicine that has acetaminophen in it and then also take acetaminophen. There have been many cases of people sending themselves into liver failure because acetaminophen gets processed by the liver. And if you're taking it every 4 hours with your cold medicine and you're taking it every 4 hours for your headache, you're taking it twice as often as you should, and that can lead to liver failure. I have a friend whose niece died after she was sick for a weekend, and she was just taking a bunch of over-the-counter medications, and she actually sent herself into liver failure and died, and she was 22 years old. So it can happen, it does happen, and so be careful with using acetaminophen that you don't take too much. Let's see. If you have a headache, drink water first. A lot of headaches are caused by dehydration, and so try to drink a little water first. If you haven't eaten recently, try to eat a little something with protein in it. Sometimes that will help. And I think that you'll know you're going to be placed in positions where you're not necessarily going to be doing the best self-care because you've got 4 tests tomorrow and you have to work your shift at the bookstore tonight. And so you're not going to necessarily be eating and drinking and resting the way you should. And everybody knows that, but we still have to tell you to do it. But just try drinking water if you have a headache. If you have a virus with a cough or a runny nose, you want to drink lots of water when you're sick because you want to keep those secretions as thin as possible so you can cough them out or blow them out, because you want to get those secretions moving, because if you get infected with the bacteria, it'll settle in those secretions. And speaking of secretions, this is a nurse thing. You got to look at your secretions. So when you blow your nose, look at what's coming out. Is it clear? Is it white? Is it bright yellow? Is it green? Same thing with coughing stuff up. Don't just swallow it. Spit a little bit of it into a Kleenex or a tissue and see what color it is, because those colors give us cues as healthcare providers. If you're coughing up mostly clear white stuff and you don't have a fever, we're going to assume that you have a viral a cold, and we're going to recommend rest, hydration, and cough medicine, symptom control. But if you're coughing up really thick green stuff and you have a fever, we're going to put you on the fast track to be evaluated for pneumonia. So all that information is really helpful to us. A lot of times, if you go in and you've got a cough, they'll ask you for a specimen so that you have to cough in a cup, and so that they can see it and send it to the lab and test it for bacteria. These bacterial infections will require antibiotics, and so it's important to not ignore green and or bright yellow secretions from either your nose or your lungs when you cough things up. Let's see. And the thing about cleaning up your secretions or keeping track of them, if you keep track and you go to the doctor before it's big, thick, green chunks of stuff coming out of your lung, you may prevent a pneumonia by getting started early on antibiotics. So the other secretion you need to look at is your urine. Urine should be clear or almost clear in the toilet. If it's not clear, you're not drinking enough. If it's really dark, you're really dehydrated, you're going to be at risk for getting headaches and just your body tissue's kind of drying out. And so it's really important. You can monitor your hydration state by keeping an eye on what that urine looks like. We had a soccer coach that used to always tell the kids that if you're feeling thirsty, you're already dehydrated. So keep on top of that hydration. And I know it can be hard to do that. I mean, it seems like most of us carry around a water bottle, but keep that habit up if you have it. And if you don't have it, then try to start it so you can keep yourself hydrated. Wash hands frequently. I should be putting this like every other sentence on this presentation, because the best way to prevent yourself from getting infections is to wash your hands. That was true before COVID, and it's true after COVID. Wash your hands and don't touch your face, and that will decrease it's going to be an unintended consequence of having less flu and colds, I think, because of COVID, because we're all paranoid about touching our face and we're all washing our hands. But this is something we should have done for forever. Back in the day, we didn't use gloves to start IVs on people. When we take a needle and put it in somebody's hand to either draw blood or to give them fluids, we didn't use gloves when we did that. And then the HIV crisis came, and because of HIV, we started using gloves anytime we were going to have contact with blood. And what happened in healthcare providers, the number of cases of hepatitis went down. We were trying to prevent HIV, but what we did, we changed practice and we prevented hepatitis, which was, it was an unintended consequence. But I think if we all learn to wash our hands more because of COVID, that will be an unintended consequence of COVID that will actually decrease other diseases. There's a couple of resources for if you're feeling bad. You should find out from your parents if your insurance has a telephone nurse that you can call, because some insurances have a telephone nurse and they're available 24/7, and you can call them and say, hey, I've got yellow secretions and a fever of 101. What should I do? And they'll tell you tell you what to do. And if you go this way, it's actually the cheapest way to go, because the phone calls are typically free. And then where they refer you is going to be somebody that's called in-network. So it's important to stay in-network if you can, because those providers have worked out a way with the insurance to charge less. And so every time you get a fever or you have yellow stuff coming out of your nose, you don't want to run to the emergency room, because that's going to cost your parents hundreds of dollars, or perhaps you, if you're having to pay your own medical bills. The other thing to be the other resource is the campus health center, and you can go there and they can test for a lot of different things. I think they can test for strep. So if you have a super sore throat, you might want to go there and they can just swab it and see right away if it's strep. If it is strep throat, you do need to have antibiotics in order to clear that up. And it's important not to ignore that, because untreated strep throat can lead to strep bacteria clumping around the heart valves and can actually lead to heart valve problems. And an important thing for you all to remember is that excessive thirst and excessive urination is a hallmark sign of diabetes. And so anybody can get diabetes. You can get type 1 or type 2. It's usually the type 1 that causes the biggest problems, and that's the kind where the excessive urination and the excessive thirst is more prevalent. And so you can be fine one day, and then the next day you think, man, this is the 4th bottle of water I'm going through today, and I've done nothing but pee. Think about diabetes, especially if you have a history in your family. It could be that it's coming up on you, and diabetes needs to be treated comprehensively right from the get-go. So if you experience excessive thirst or excessive urination, go ahead and have that evaluated. I want to talk a little bit about mental health, because May is Mental Health Month. It's challenging to talk about mental health because there's a lot of stigma that goes along with it, but it's really important, especially for young people, as you're at this crossroad from going from being really dependent on your parents or your guardians to maybe being a lot less dependent. So you have a lot of issues that can come up. And it's important to know that there's no shame in needing to talk to a counselor or a therapist. If you are feeling bad most days, you should probably talk to someone. You can talk to a friend, you can talk to a counselor, the health nurse for the insurance line, or the health nurse for the college if you're going to college. Those people can all be really helpful in getting you established with resources. Another thing you can do is there's crisis lines, and wherever you are, like wherever you've relocated, if you just look up crisis line for your area, there will be a number. It'll be a 24-hour number that you can call and talk to someone, and they can provide you with resources on where to go so that you get seen right away. And because suicide it's the saddest thing. It's so hard it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem, and we can't stand to lose our young people. So please be mindful of your mental health, and don't be embarrassed if you're feeling bad. You're going through a lot of transitions. It's totally understandable. I think we're all feeling a little bad with this COVID keeping us all trapped. It's hard to keep your cheery disposition. The other thing is, you had a hobby, probably. Maybe you played an instrument, maybe you did puzzles, but you did something for leisure before video games, I'll say it. You probably had something that you did for fun that helped you to relax. You should make time for that once you are in this next phase of your life, because that can help keep you sort of satisfied. It can bring you joy in life. If when you put that last piece of that puzzle in there, it's just so gratifying. And you should make time for that. Although you're going to be making time for so much stuff, I know that it's challenging, but just keep these things in the back of your mind. The other thing that's really highly recommended lately. It's sort of like we're in the age of mindfulness and meditation. If that's something that appeals to you, there are several free apps that you can learn to do mindfulness and meditation, to one or the other or both. And that type of stuff can help you when you're having challenges, can help you kind of center yourself so that it doesn't become the biggest thing. Oh, like, oh my gosh, I got to be on a test. How bad is that? And with mindfulness, you can kind of put it in perspective, and come up with a plan to do better next time. If that's, although I'd be happy with a B. But anyway, check that out. There's lots of resources on mindfulness and meditation. So good web sources for information about your health, because I know you're going to look things up yourself. And there's a few. The CDC, and that's just cdc.gov, Mayo Clinic, which is MAYO, mayoclinic.org, and then the clevelandclinic.org, and then the National Institutes of Health, or the NIH. Those are all good sources. People Magazine, not so much. Some of the ones that just pop up if it pops up on Facebook and it's telling you can lose that belly fat, it's not a good source. And then the last thing I want to talk about is COVID-19. And I just want to reassure you, don't panic, wash your hands, wear your masks, know how to take your mask off without contaminating it. And so that is the side that's touching your face and the side that is away from your face. The side that's away from your face is potentially contaminated. So when you come home, you wash that mask immediately in antibacterial soap and hot water, and then you wash your hands after you've finished washing it. Because if you were exposed, say somebody wasn't wearing a mask and you were exposed, that COVID or whatever else is going to be on the outside of your mask. While some young people have gotten ill and they're having some little bit different symptoms than older people who have gotten ill, most of the people who are at risk are older people and people who have chronic health problems, like your grandparents and perhaps your parents. So you're wearing a mask, while you may see it as an insult to your personal freedom, is actually you showing consideration for these older generations so that they don't get this disease from you, because they won't come through it as well as you would. And then about the COVID, you want to get your information from the CDC and the NIH, not other sources, because it's just not based on science. There's a lot of stuff going on out there that is not scientific, so keep your sources reliable, the CDC and the NIH. So I'm going to stop there and open it up for questions.
So thank you, Patsy. We do have a couple of questions.
Okay.
We've got about 8 or 9 minutes left, so I don't know if we'll use the whole time, but one of the questions was, what do you think about online health provider options?
Well, I think it's the wave of the future. We're really developing that, and there's a company called 98.6, which does things all online, and it's really an up and coming thing. So I think that's going to be an unintended consequence of COVID, because people weren't coming into the office. They were using Zoom and that kind of thing to talk with their doctor. So I think it's okay. It's up and coming. So there's still some glitches to be worked out, but I think it has a lot of promise.
Okay. You didn't talk too much about, let's see, where might I find CPR class training? And I guess a follow-on for me personally is the old adage was mouth to mouth, but that's not the case. Is that correct?
That's right. We're for out of hospital CPR, we're advocating compressions only, and you can get training through the American Red Cross, and you can get training at fire stations. The American Red Cross does charge you. The fire stations sometimes the classes are free, sometimes they're like $35, and there's a written test, and then you have to also demonstrate how to do the compressions. And if you do compressions, you put one hand over the other hand, you find the spot, and I'm not going to try to teach you over Zoom, but you actually do the compressions to the rate of the song Stayin' Alive. So if you know the song Stayin' Alive by the Bee Gees, which, yeah, I was there when it first came out. I danced in nightclubs to that song. But little known trivia, but you do your compressions and you want to do them that fast, and it seems fast, and it's like about 120 beats a minute, but that's what you want. And it's never a bad idea to be trained in CPR.
Right. All right. Let me, there's another one in here. It says, what to do if my roommate is sick, how to protect myself and convince them to go to the clinic.
Oh boy. Well, it depends on your roommate. Some people have an irrational fear of healthcare providers, so you can always wash your hands frequently. You can take antibacterial wipes and wipe the things that you guys will use the same, like the doorknobs, the light switches. Wash those off often, and then try to avoid being around them. I mean, in the state we're in right now, where everybody can wear a mask and it's not seen as a big deal, you could wear a mask that will half protect you. But the other thing is to try to let them know that if they don't intervene early on in their illness, they could get more sick. So try to convince them that way, but mostly protect yourself with the antibacterial wipes, the mask, and washing your hands.
And just a personal follow up, my daughter's will be a sophomore upcoming at college, and she's already had discussions with her roommates as far as just all being on the same page when they do go back in the fall regarding this, as far as whether it's masks or who comes in, or the cleanliness and like that. So trying to keep everybody in the household on the same page.
Yeah, that's going to be a learning skill for everybody, I think, negotiating school in a time of COVID.
What about something that we migrate into the summer? Remedies for bee sting.
Oh, I'm allergic to bee stings, so I have to have an EpiPen. And if you are allergic to bee stings, you should have your EpiPen and make sure it's not expired. Bee stings, if somebody gets stung and they've never been stung before and they don't know if they're allergic, you need to watch them for swelling. A lot of people will swell at the site. So like if I got stung on my hand, it's normal for my hand to swell. If I have an anaphylactic reaction, not only will my hand swell, but my entire body will swell. And that's what happens to me. And when your whole body swells, your throat swells closed. So that's the problem. So if somebody has never been stung by a bee and they don't know if they're allergic, you're going to watch them for airway issues. And if they start saying that their tongue feels like it's swelling, then that's an emergency and you need to call 911. Otherwise, you can put baking soda on it. It'll take away some of the itch and the sting. You can use calamine lotion on it to keep it from itching and just kind of soothe it. You can put ice on it. You can elevate it. You want to keep that swelling as much as you can from, like making a finger lose a pulse or anything like that.
And my wife is allergic to fish, and so you mentioned the EpiPen. Explain that a little bit. If you had somebody that couldn't administer that themselves, most learn how to. But what if I came up on somebody that was unconscious and there was an EpiPen? How does that get administered?
Well, it's great. There's different kinds of them, but they've made them so easy to do now. You used to have to draw something up and then inject it, and now they have their automatic injectors, and you can just do it right through the clothes. The directions are right there, and some of them actually talk you through it. So depending on which kind you have, you just jab them right in the thigh, and don't think about it. Just jab and inject, and you can't go wrong. I mean, it's the lesser of two evils.
Right.
Having had to, you want them to get that epi, because that's the thing that's going to counteract that airway swelling, and so the EpiPen will actually reverse the anaphylactic shock.
Great. Well, I think that is all of the questions we have, unless someone types another one real quick. Patsy, that has been great information. Thank you so
Great.
very much
Well,
for
thank
joining.
you all. Thank you all for being here. It was wonderful to talk with you.